If you're interested in supporting the channel, there are two things you can do. Flipside Gaming is offering a 10% discount for any order $10 or more if you use the promo code VOIDMAGE on their website. That is VOIDMAGE in all caps. I will also have an affiliate link to tcgplayer.com. If you use that link, any purchase you make on that website will go towards supporting the channel. I appreciate the support. Also hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Hello everyone, welcome back to another 10 underrated commander cards video. Previously I went over some of the reserve list cards. This time I'm going to keep it relatively new, going back as far as Ravnica Allegiance, and all of the cards here are pretty cheap. The first one is from Modern Horizons. This is Hall of Heliod's Generosity. Now, if you've seen Volrath's Stronghold, Academy Ruins, those two cards are very similar, but with Hall of Heliod's Generosity, you're going to want to bring back enchantments, and white is a good color for enchantments, so it makes perfect sense. While enchantments are not nearly as prominent as artifacts, it is still a very strong strategy in the format. There are a lot of enchantment-centered decks, even if it's just auras from a Voltron deck. Being able to constantly bring back enchantments is a pretty valuable thing to have. The next card is a regular cohort, also from Modern Horizons. Now 4 power and toughness for 4 mana is not really that big of a deal, but the point here is Changeling. If you have any sort of strategy where you can benefit from playing creatures of a certain type, like with Reaper King and Scarecrows, a regular cohort is going to be a pretty good card for your deck. Changelings are typically good for tribal strategies because they can be any creature type. So whether it's ETBs or combat triggers like with Edgar Markov, benefiting from a tribal synergy is ideal, and just getting more bodies for the mana that you pay, sometimes that's the only thing that really matters. And then there's Blood for Bones. If you're a fan of the card Victimize, this is going to be good for you in a similar way. You are still going to sacrifice a creature, but instead of 2 creatures coming back to the battlefield, only one is and the other's going to go to your hand. So you could say it is a little bit worse, but that's only if you view a creature back to your hand as a negative. Sometimes you could get another cast trigger, so don't be so quick to overlook that. And the creature you do bring back to the battlefield doesn't enter tapped. So that was the big disadvantage to Victimize. I'm not going to try to convince anybody this is a better or worse card, because you should probably be playing both of these in the same decks anyway. Never really a bad thing to have creature recursion, especially in black where you're probably going to be sacrificing a bunch of them. And then we have Incubation Druid, kind of like Gyre Sage, a little bit better, and that's considering Evolve being pretty easy to trigger. The upside here is that the mana you get off of Incubation Druid is not just green. However easy it was to pile up the +1/+1 counters on Gyre Sage, the fact that the mana that you get off of an Incubation Druid is dependent on the lands that you have means that if you're playing more than just mono green, you're going to have access to more colors. So while you do have the potential of tapping a Gyre Sage for a bunch of mana, it is nice to have creatures that offer you that mana fixing, similar to why Birds of Paradise is such a popular creature. And then we have Spring Bloom Druid. If you're a fan of Harrow, this is kind of like the creature ETB version of Harrow. Some would say this is even better than Harrow because you're able to bring back creatures with things like Sun Titan, and there are a ton of land strategies in the format where getting 2 lands coming into play is going to help you out big time if you have a commander like a Tatyova or the Gitrog monster. Sacrificing lands is not necessarily a bad thing if you have a commander like the Gitrog monster, which will let you draw more cards. At the common level, and also being another card from Modern Horizons, it is one of the cards I think could become a pretty solid green staple. It just seems to work out well with a bunch of decks. And then there is Neoform, kind of like Eldritch Evolution. A bit worse though because it's less forgiving. You have to get a creature with that CMC. It can't be less than or equal to. But still, considering this is just 2 mana and sacrificing a creature, you can cheat into play certain cards like Palinchron, Deadeye Navigator, and your opponents won't be able to counter whatever you get. They have to counter Neoform before it resolves. So it does present you with that kind of power, making combos a little bit easier. And you do know that tutors are pretty powerful in a singleton format. And then we have another card from War of the Spark, Kiora Behemoth Beckoner. Now out of all of the uncommon planeswalkers from the set, Kiora has to be one of the better ones. She starts out at a whopping 7 loyalty for only 3 mana, while also giving you one of the best passives. This was a huge upside for planeswalkers in the set, where they did more than just their loyalty abilities. So fill your deck with a bunch of large creatures, you get rewarded for those ETBs, it helps speed your deck up. A nice little engine there. And you also have the loyalty ability where you can untap a permanent, which doesn't really hurt where we have things like Gilded Lotus, and Incubation Druid that can tap for multiple multiple mana. And next we have Mayhem Devil, another pretty sweet card from War of the Spark. Whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, it's going to deal 1 damage to any target. This comes in handy because one of the newer options is Korvold, a commander that will allow you to sacrifice permanents. But this does come in handy because players like to play with fetch lands. People play with sack outlets like Ashnod's Altar, Phyrexian Altar, just to get more mana. And not to mention there are a bunch of infinite combos that involve sacrificing. So if your opponents have any of that, this could be a big deterrent. Not to mention you could of course take advantage of those yourself. Having Mayhem Devil does fit in pretty well with cards like Zulaport Cutthroat, where it's all about forcing your opponents to lose as much life as possible. And when you can take advantage of your cards in addition to stopping your opponents from something that they could do, it's usually a sign of a pretty good card. And then we have a card from a core set 2020, Moldervine Reclamation. This is one of those cards that I think could have been at the rare rarity, and I wouldn't have been surprised because it's that good. All you need is your creatures to die, you can draw cards and gain life. Drawing more and more cards is never really a bad thing, but you also get a bit of life gain. So if you ever need to get back into a game, something like this is pretty good to have. And I just mentioned a commander like Korvold, where you're going to be able to sacrifice creatures pretty easily. Why not get a little bit more of a reward by gaining life and drawing cards? Well worth the 5 mana for a card that's just going to sit on the field and gain you a ton of advantage. And the last card from Ravnica Allegiance is Revival and Revenge, the split card in Orzhov. Now the first part isn't really anything special. 2 mana, sorcery speed, return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's nice to have something like this, you never know when it could come in handy, but the revenge part is what we're really looking at. Double your life total and target opponent loses half of their life rounded up. While it's not what I would consider a win con, in the right deck it could be. There are a ton of cards like Sanguine Bond that reward you for gaining life, but also letting you force an opponent to lose that much life. And in those life gain decks, you're just going to see a bunch of cards like this that do that. And I don't really have a problem playing this alongside other cards like Debt to the Deathless, which given a bunch of mana, you could actually kill off opponents. So another case of more of the same, but you get more of the same with a nice little option to bring back a creature from the graveyard to the battlefield if you really need it. But anyway guys, that's going to do it for the video. Let me know about these 10 underrated commander cards. You guys have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next video.